Welcome to the Claire Orton podcast. In this series, The Narc Behind the Educator, I and fellow narcissism educators discuss and share our own personal journeys with the narcissist and narcissistic abuse in our own lives.
'Cause every time you talk it sound like blah, 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 blah. I'm just hearing blah.
Hi, Jacob. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you have been on for a while.
Yeah,
Because I've been watching your videos for a while. How long has it been?
that's a good question, actually. So let me think. I think it was 20. I'm like looking at the date right now just to
Yeah.
like find like
What year is it?
I'm like, what year is it? Oh my God. So probably about a year and a half now, I would say.
Okay, so close
But
to
I
a
think
couple
I
of
started,
years.
I think I started early 2022.
Okay. So you are a self-aware narcissist.
I think so, at least.
How long have you felt that there was something different about you?
Oh man, a long time to say the least. It's
Mhm.
interesting because like I like for most of my life I knew something was like off about me. I had a
Mhm.
lot of separate experiences and feelings that kind of led me to come to that conclusion.
What kind of things?
I think I would say the first thing that like really made me like my mind kind of be like, huh, that might not be right, is when I went to a funeral when I was like really young. Like I was probably younger than 10. I remember
Okay.
going there and they're like, and and everyone's crying and stuff. And I'm just thinking the entire time, oh, all these people are doing it because they feel like they have to, or for attention, or they're just being dramatic, like very much
Right.
downplaying the importance of the event. And
Wow.
on my way home, I remember thinking like, it doesn't really make sense that everybody else is kind of faking all that crap. Why would that be? And so I started to like, that's when I started actually like trying to research stuff like this, is
Wow.
because I was like, oh, well, like maybe it's me actually, but I was never quite convinced. And
Okay.
to this day,
What
I'm still
age?
not really convinced.
What age were you when you had this realization with the funeral?
Again, I was younger than 10. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly my background.
Okay. Interesting. So you were getting that self-awareness from a very young age that something was quite different.
Yes.
So when did you get the diagnosis?
So it was first proposed when I was like 16 or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I didn't really pay much attention to it because I was a kid. Like I didn't care. I was like, and like even in the moment, because like I had this violent episode and I was forced into therapy by courts, not because I did
Like a
anything illegal.
physically violent episode.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't like. I mean, I did do something illegal, but like the court system was involved with my family for a long time, just because of some of the events that happen around us.
Okay.
Not around us, but just within the family dynamic. And
Yeah.
so, anyway, I was put in therapy, and it was like proposed, like, oh yeah, you seem to like be developing MPD or you have narcissistic traits. I don't remember how they phrased it. I don't know if I was officially diagnosed, but that's when it was first put in my head. And I was like, kind of
Okay.
like, who cares? Like, I was young. I was kind of like, yeah, maybe that's a thing. I don't really care. I didn't appreciate the severity of the diagnosis at the time. I didn't
Okay.
understand what it really meant. In my mind, it was just kind of like, back then, I just kind of thought, oh, this means I think I'm better than people and I manipulate people. And I was kind of just okay, just kind of running with that. I was like, if it is true, who cares? Like that's
Yeah.
a bonus, more or less.
Yeah.
But then
So I noticed that narcissists tend to be proud of those tendencies.
yes. Well, I personally, yes, because I have been at various points in my life where I'm just kind of like, yeah, I can manipulate people. I'm awesome in that way.
Yeah.
I'm so charming and charismatic,
Yeah.
and I don't care if I hurt people, whatever.
Yeah.
I genuinely think though that's probably a coping mechanism, because for me, it's like I do still have this feeling of like feeling like a bad person, so to speak. Like
Okay.
I feel flawed. And when I do hurt people, and if it's pointed out, especially, I feel a lot of shame around it. I feel like I am
Mm,
defective because I can hurt people like that. And I feel like us taking
okay.
pride in these negative qualities is just a way for us to kind of cope with that innate feeling of badness.
The self-protect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the listeners, Jacob and I have spoken before. Just why we were
You weren't
laughing in
supposed
the
to tell
intro there.
them.
But you had told me that you had a physical, like formal piece of paper diagnosis.
Yes.
How recently did you get that?
So, well, let me see. I have it right here. I keep it on hand
Do you
because,
actually?
like, I'll be doing like a live stream, and people will be
Yeah.
like, "You're not actually a narcissist," and I'm like,
Here's the
"Here we
proof.
go." So that was. Let's see. So I've been seeing her since 2019,
Mhm.
and this was so I was diagnosed in 2021.
Okay. Okay.
That's when I was like actually took it seriously and thought,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I should really look into these behaviors.
Mhm. Okay. So you mentioned before that your childhood was a little tumultuous.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like?
Okay. So, um, it wasn't pleasant. I would say
Okay.
that it could be kind of characterized by the fact that things started to go wrong when I was around 5 years old, I want to say, because my mom
Okay.
left my dad for a woman at this point. And
Okay.
and it's like, that is what it is. But
Mhm.
after that, my dad got very depressed and he was just like, he wasn't very available and like his anger got very much out of control. My mom was too invested in her new relationship to really pay attention to me and my sister. That's why both of us kind of developed personality disorders. My sister was there was a lot of drug abuse that ended up happening on my sister's side. My mom was
Mhm.
like, I wouldn't say that she was like an alcoholic, but she like
Mm.
drank a lot. And
Okay.
honestly, one of my fondest memories of my family is like getting wasted with my mom on and my sister on Halloween when I was like 16. but
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
um, but yeah, there was violence. And like,
Mm.
there's some things that like I only have vague memories of that I'm not really comfortable talking about, particularly just because
That's
I'm
okay.
not sure what the
Understand.
reality is. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a very, um, it bred this need in me to feel like, oh, I'm independent. I don't need anybody. I can take care of
Mhm.
myself,
Yeah.
more or less.
So you feel that your childhood definitely had a really strong impact on how you are today.
Yes,
Yeah.
I genuinely think that like personality disorders, it's hard for them to exist without some kind of trauma involved. I think there's a
Mm.
genetic component where it's like you have a predisposition
Yeah.
or something, and then it's like the trauma will
Yeah.
bring it out.
Mm.
I've personally never met somebody with a personality disorder that doesn't have some kind of trauma.
Mm. I understand. So, how do you feel that this affects your relationships with other people in general?
Negatively, I would say.
Okay.
I have a hard time keeping any sort of relationship going for long periods because
Mm.
usually it's like I I consider myself pretty charming. I will
Mhm.
make very good first impressions on people, but it's
Mhm.
like the more that they see of me, the more that I'm kind of ashamed of myself and what they're seeing of me, and that
Mhm.
fear of vulnerability can kind of make me lash out. And that happens a
Okay.
lot, especially in romantic relationships. And then in romantic relationships too, it's always like I'm like, oh, like, what if this person isn't my soulmate? What if they're not the perfect person for me? What if like my perfect person is still out there? And it's like one
Mm.
thing that makes this relationship not look perfect will kind of start polluting all my other thoughts, and everything they do will be like viewed through this lens of, oh, this is a reason that we're not compatible, right?
Okay.
Um,
So this is like
and
the
also,
devaluation stage, yeah? So
I
would
think
you
that's
say
what
that
people.
when you, yeah. would you say that when you first meet someone, you really go through that idealization where you put them on a pedestal and you kind of have this projection of perfection, that they're that person that's, maybe your
Yeah.
soulmates come along and they're going to save you from everything, and then cracks start to appear?
Oh, hands down, yeah. Because people they kind of paint like the idealization, love bombing in quotes,
Mhm.
as more predatory than it really is, at least in my experience. I'm sure there's people
Mhm.
out there who are more predatory about it, but me personally, and most
Yeah.
people I know, they'll be like I'll meet somebody, and usually it's like they'll have some aspect that I envy or I
Mm.
admire. Like
Mhm.
for me, a lot of times it's like somebody that I view as like, oh, they're so nice. They're nicer than anybody I've known. They're charitable, virtuous, etc.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, this is like the perfect person to compliment me. This is the person that's like, going to save me sometimes is a mindset. That's not as common for
Yeah.
me, but
Yeah.
it happens. Um, it's a very genuine infatuation during that
Yeah.
period. It just doesn't last.
Yeah. So there's definitely narcissists that are consciously manipulating and are conscious of what they're doing in the love bombing period. But probably the majority, I think, would be what you're describing, where you honestly feel like this person is going to be amazing.
Yeah, like I think I again, I think I met my soulmate 99% of the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
like, I would say that maybe there's some people more on the malignant side who
Hmm.
are intentionally doing it, but uh,
Yeah. More
I
psychopathic traits.
very few. I can't think of a time that I've met somebody that like predates consciously. Usually, it's more of,
Mm.
oh, I think I'm in love with this person. Then devaluation starts, and we get like irritated at everything that they do because of the
Hmm.
conflicts with ourselves and the shame of not being able to return that love. Well, at least for me, like I
Mm.
get, I feel almost like I feel ashamed of myself a lot of times because they're like I don't know, they'll be looking at me and they'll be telling me how much they love me and stuff, and I'm just not feeling it. I just have to like fake it half the time.
Wow.
During at least this phase, and it makes me like it makes me hate myself a lot. I hate the fact that like I don't know, it feels so disgusting. It makes me feel inferior,
Mm.
makes me feel defective, what have
Mm.
you. Um,
So
but
is that,
there are
sorry, go
sorry,
on.
was that? No, I was basically done.
No, I just wanted to clarify, like you get in the love bombing stage with someone, you think that they're amazing, you build a quick connection, and then their feelings catch up and they feel like they love you, and then they are saying that they love you and expressing it, and then you kind of hit a wall where you're like, I can't reciprocate this level of feeling. Is
Yes.
that what you mean?
Yes, like yeah. Yeah, that's like generally the kind of track that it takes is I start off, I'm infatuated, I think I'm in love, I
Hmm.
am obsessed with the person.
Hmm.
Then usually what happens is like, I get them. And then it's like cool for a little bit until
Yeah.
the first crack appears, and then it's a cascade. And
Yeah.
then during this cascade, they're like expressing all these intimate feelings that I just can't match.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, it like makes me feel like a piece of crap generally.
Yeah. Okay. How would you describe love? Do you think
How
you feel
so
love?
that's so hard. Like true love or my infatuation with people. Because I would say my infatuation with people is generally like during like the love bombing phase in quotes, when I
Mm.
think I'm in love with people, it's just a very euphoric feeling, very much
Mm.
like I am completely invested in this
Limerence.
person. It's perfect. Yes, yes. It's basically limerence is how I
Yeah.
experience love normally. But then there's the idealized version of love that I have that I feel like
Yeah.
I can never really, that I almost feel incapable of having with somebody, which is
Yeah.
like how I always describe it is like, oh, when somebody unconditional love is when you can hurt somebody over and over again, but you'll always go back to one another.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and that's something that I feel like I don't feel like that's a healthy version of love, first of all. And second of all,
Mm.
it's something I feel almost not unworthy of, but like that it's incapable, that kind of love is impossible for somebody to feel towards the real me, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's a complicated feeling because I like some level I feel fundamentally unlovable. I feel like
Yeah.
people can't love. Um,
But
and
what about
I
what you
and
feel to others? I find that a lot of narcissists, their definition of love usually comes down to some form of transaction. Kind of like you were saying before, that I can hurt you over and over again and you're going to come back to me. I know that my
yeah,
narcissist described love as I have to know that you're going to be there no matter what. I have to know that you're going to stand by me no matter what. I have to see that you're going to be on my side no matter what. And it's not
mhm.
a description of love, it's a description of a transaction.
it's
What do you think about that?
like because that makes complete sense to me. It's
Yeah,
like
okay.
I like romantically, it's a little bit different for me. I have a much more
Hmm.
dismissive attachment. And
Okay.
uh, that kind of changed from, but like in terms of platonic relationships, especially, I am fixated on loyalty. I am fixated on the idea of this person has to have my back no matter what. And
Hmm.
in my mind, it's not like I expect that without reciprocation. I think that, oh, I would be completely loyal to you. So you should be
Hmm.
completely loyal to me. Like
Hmm.
it can present very weirdly sometimes. Once my car battery died
Hmm.
and I called my friend being like, hey, I need a jump, like help me out here.
Hmm.
And she uh and she was like, oh yeah, I want to run some errands real quick and I'll be right back and like I can help you out. And I was pissed off because I was like, if I was in your situation, I would have dropped everything to help you and stuff like that. You like that
Yeah,
felt like a betrayal to me.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
entitled as well, but yeah.
I understand. So, what normally sets off the devaluation phase for you?
it,
Is it gradual or is it like a light switch?
it's gradual. I
Okay.
think that's a big difference between borderline personality disorder and NPD, if I'm being honest, because like
Hmm.
with borderline, they'll flip flop back and forth constantly, and I do too to a certain degree. But
Hmm.
the evaluation for me, it's usually like there'll just be one minor thing that
Hmm.
like makes me like question that if this is the perfect relationship. Then from there
Yeah.
on out, I'm basically looking out for any sign to confirm that. Um,
Mm.
I'm trying to think what I like. I had one relationship where it's like I got really excited about this video about fucking ants because I think ants are cool. And she wasn't really into it, and I
Okay.
was like, and that's what literally that's what
Instantly not my
sparked this
soulmate.
evaluation is that she didn't like ants as much as I did, and I was like, this is proof we're not soulmates. It was stupid, but like, yeah,
But
it
that's
can
the
be anything.
feeling, right? It sounds silly,
Yeah,
but that's how you feel. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it, and it sucks. Like I don't like it, obviously, but but that's reality. It's just that
Mm.
like the
Mm.
smallest thing can just cause me to completely dismiss all the other value that happened in the relationship and just view it through
Yeah.
this lens of anxiety. And because like a lot of people view it as like people are like, oh, they are devaluing you and that's terrible. Yeah, like that
Hmm.
sucks, obviously. But like for it's anxiety inducing. I'm like afraid that this person isn't my soulmate, basically.
Hmm. Like you're
And
wasting
I'm
your
like,
time with the wrong person. Is that why it's anxiety inducing?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I get so and yeah, so that I mean that sucks. It happens, it sucks.
So you mentioned before that you feel that, love bombing phase and even like kicking off the devaluation is like an innate thing that happens. It's intuitive. It's something that just happens. It's not conscious
Yeah.
manipulation. But narcissistic relationships and narcissistic abuse are kind of characterized by a level of manipulation and
Mhm.
gaslighting and that sense of doubt that narcissists tend to instill in their partners.
Mhm.
What do you think about
Yeah.
that? What's your experience in relationships with
So
manipulation and devaluation?
well, I want to point out that like I view it's hard for me a lot of times because it's like I view everything through a lens of manipulation. Like
Oh, tell me about that.
let's say that like like I don't know, let's say I'm working, I don't know, I'm building a fence. This is just an example.
Okay.
This isn't anecdotal, it's just just what I'm using for this. But
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
comes over and they're like, hey, like let me help you out. I know how to do this. I'm not thinking, oh, this person cares about me, so they want to help me. I'm thinking, oh, they're offering this help therefore, so that like I will either view them better, or that they think that, or to prove their loyalty to me, or because they
Mm,
want to prove they're better at fence working, whatever. I
mm,
view everyone's motivations through a lens of manipulation. So it
mm,
gets kind of hard for me to kind of differentiate what's intentional and not, because it's
mm.
like, I don't know, everything's fucking manipulation at the end of the day. Everything has a
Yeah,
selfish.
yeah.
Um,
And
and I
narcissists
would say,
tend to project the way that they think and the way that they see things onto everyone else around them.
yeah, and like that's the thing. Is like a lot of the times I feel like I have this kind of mindset where it's like I assume that everyone kind of knows that everyone's kind of out for themselves.
Mm,
And I accept help like that, right? Even if I think it's some form of manipulation to like win a favor over on me or something. Because I'm like, that's just how the world works. Like it just seems obvious.
mm,
But that being said, I think a lot of the times people, because of how manipulative narcissists can be and how we view the world through manipulation, I do feel like a lot
mm,
of the times the motivations are misconstrued, right?
mm.
Because
Yeah.
for example, like people will talk about how, oh, like the narcissist like cried when I left, and that was obviously manipulation. I'm like, okay, if a narcissist won't fucking cry in front of you, for manipulation, because one, we can't, it's fucking hard.
Mm,
I wish I could, honestly. It's probably but like that's the thing, but I don't blame people for having that misconception. It's because it's like
mm.
um given the pattern of behavior, I can see how like a genuine expression would be viewed through that lens of this is probably also manipulation. And then
Yeah.
like, if they do take it back, then they'll fucking manipulate again. So whatever.
Yeah.
But
Maybe there's a little variation because I do know of other self-aware narcissists who say that narcissists will cry to manipulate.
see, that's interesting to me because because I would like I'm not willing to let somebody pity me for manipulation. That make me look too pathetic.
Mm, yeah.
So it's like if I would go to that, so I'm sure there are some that do, obviously, like everyone presents
Yeah.
differently. But
Yeah,
for me,
that's
it's
it.
like
They present differently, use different
yeah.
tactics and things like that. Yeah.
But for me, it would be like so humil. Like there is nothing in the world that I would gain that I would feel worth fake crying about just because of
Mm,
how lowly I view myself for letting
mm,
somebody see me emotional. Right. So
mm,
generally, if I do express emotion like that, it is genuine, but
mm,
but then that can change also because it's like, oh, I cry because I miss this. Like, well, I don't cry, but I mean, I do,
mm.
but like not in front of people. Like, let's say like an ex breaking out, and I have an emotional moment. I'll
Mm,
be like, and like I end up being emotional like that, and they take me back. The
mm,
next day, it completely change. Like I could have zero emotion towards them again, because a lot of times what happens is if somebody breaks up with me, I feel like they are proving that they are better than me by
mhm,
breaking up with me. It's like, oh,
mm.
well, if I was
You have to win the
superior, then you
interaction.
would still want to be with me. What's up?
Is it like you have to win the interaction?
Yeah, like, yes, kind of. It's
Mm,
like, I, if, I guess it kind of comes down to like the idea that if I am superior, then they want to be with me no matter what. If I'm
mm.
inferior, they'll break up with me and find somebody better.
Yeah.
So them breaking up with me is proof that they're better, and so I'm trying to prove
Mm,
myself. Like, and a lot of times I actually mistake that hit to my ego as
mm.
heartbreak, and not to say
Interesting.
that like, and not to say it's like, oh, I never, and not to say that like, oh, I don't have genuine feelings of like affection towards people, but generally I can. A lot of times it's just like my ego fucking thrashing, and I can't distinguish that pain from a heartbreak.
Okay, I understand. Like a narcissistic injury.
Yeah, more or less. Well, that's what a breakup is. I would say, in my experience, is that like, oh, you are insulting my ego by breaking up with me because you're trying to say that you're better and you can do better.
Mm, okay, that's how you see it. That's how you view it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. What do you think about narcissists misinterpreting facial expressions and tones and perceiving attacks and perceiving disrespect where there isn't
Uh,
any?
it, it's interesting
You're like
actually.
nodding.
So
Yeah.
it's, I'm like, yeah, I do it all.
Yep.
I actually have a story about this. I'm not sure if I
Okay.
told this last time. So I once
Tell
had a
me.
buddy. Um, so I was at this birthday party and I had a
Mm-hmm.
mutual friend there. He was dating the girl whose birthday party it was. And I'm like
Mm-hmm.
sitting, I'm having a good time. I'm trying to be charming. Everyone loves me. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy Sean, he looked just kind of upset
Mm-hmm.
and he was kind of acting off. And in my mind, I was like, he's mad at me. And like I'm talking to everybody around me, being like, do you think he's mad at me? What did I do? I didn't do anything. I would get like, huh?
Yeah. Defensive?
Yeah, like it was funny because like my mind went to immediately from he must be mad at me to me being mad at him because I didn't do anything wrong. It's how it
Mm.
happened.
Oh, I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't,
like I didn't do anything. Why are you mad at me? Like fuck you. Like and
yeah.
like literally at the end of the birthday party, me like a couple of us were talking and he's like
Mm-hmm.
and like I was upset at this point, so obviously something was wrong with me. He's like, "Hey Jacob, you all right?" And I was like, no, it isn't. And I flicked him off and then just ran out of the room.
Because you thought he was angry at you, so you got angry at him.
Literally. Because I was like, because I got mad at him because I was like, I didn't do anything. Why are you mad at me? I didn't
Oh
do
my
anything.
God.
But
Yeah.
he wasn't. Um, but that's the thing is that like narcissists view
Mm,
everything so pertinently to themselves. It's like somebody's
mm.
upset about something. Oh, it has to do with me because we view the world so egocentrically.
Well, I
Um,
remember telling you that I had an interaction with my narcissist where I had like started crying because I was telling him how much I loved and adored him. And I was like, I love you and I adore you. And he thought I was smirking at him. And I was like, I'm telling you
like
how
you
much
thought,
I love you. And you're like, think
yeah.
I'm smirking at you. He's like, you're disrespecting me. And I was blown out of the water.
I would have. Oh my god! If
To
I
the
was in that
listeners,
situation,
Jacob is face palming pretty hard right now
no, like, because I get it.
because you get it.
Because it's like it's weird seeing both sides of the aisle at this point. Because it's like
Yeah.
on one hand, I'm like I get what he was thinking. On the other hand, I know how ridiculous that looks from the outside now. Because
Yeah.
if like if you did that to me or like somebody else close to did that to me, I would either think, oh, you're either mocking me or you're
Mm.
trying to basically guilt or manipulate me into something that you desire.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he always thought I was trying to manipulate him. And I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
I've talked about this before. It's like that's what like to me when somebody cries, like I immediately assume that like they're trying to manipulate me or they're just being or they're overreacting to something or whatever. Like I can't. It's hard to take those things seriously.
Yeah, and I find that the most common reactions when the long-term partner of a narcissist is crying, the narcissist either thinks that they're trying to manipulate them, they find it frustrating and irritating, they get angry, or they just pretend that they can't even see that you're crying.
Yeah, I've done all of those.
Okay.
Like it sounds bad. It's
Tell
like
me about that.
okay, so if somebody's crying. I'm like, so my immediate reaction is usually I'm pretty good at discerning whether this is the case or not, but like I'm assuming, oh, you're trying to guilt. Well, no, I'm not good at discerning it now. I'm thinking about it, but I assume that like, oh, you're listening sympathy for me, so I take your side about
Yeah.
whatever is happening, or show you, or you
Yeah.
need whatever. And then the frustration is usually when I'm like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. We need to fix this situation, but you're busy crying. More,
Mm.
it sounds terrible. I know,
Kind of get over it.
but yeah, basically, it's kind of like it's
Yeah.
like okay, it's not that fucking big of a deal. Let us fix this and move on. And I feel
Mm.
like the crime is almost inhibiting the ability for us to kind of move forward.
Mm.
Um, and then pretending that I don't see it is kind of I would say that's like kind of a branch or the frustration by it of
Mm.
versus
Yeah.
oh my god, this is annoying to the
Yeah.
progress of this relationship. I'm just going to pretend. I'm just going to kind of ignore it and just like just
Mm.
continue on. And then what was the last example you gave? Um,
Either
oh,
walking out or getting angry
oh
or
yeah, well like,
thinking
yeah,
that,
the anger is usually in response to thinking that it's a manipulation thing because it's like, oh, you
right.
think that you can manipulate me? Like, how dare you? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah. It's
And
that
then
lack of empathy, like that ability to feel the other person's pain. You're just looking at it, not feeling it.
yep,
Yeah.
I don't, I like, it's one of the symptoms I don't know that I'll ever like really overcome is that like people will be, I can't imagine the idea of somebody crying and then me crying in response to that. It seems like, I don't mean this meanly, but like it seems almost ridiculous, you know, to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before. Ben Taylor at Raw Motivations has made a few videos about that. He says that now he can see and know what he needs to do, but if someone that he
yeah,
cares about is crying, he's not going to cry with them.
I like, my, I just view it kind of like, oh, they're crying. Like, if somebody's crying and it's not like, I guess it's a little bit different if it's a situation that I that like I'm not in conflict with the person. But yeah, they'll be
Mm,
like, oh, like I'm like they'll start crying. And like my mindset isn't, oh, I feel so sorry for them. It's more of like, how do I get them to stop crying? Like, what do I need to do to
mm,
fix the situation
mm,
more or less to
yeah,
comfort them? I've been pretty good at that most of my life of knowing what to do, but like there's
yeah,
not really emotion behind it. It's just kind of like, oh, I know that I'm supposed to do this.
yeah. I find it's like such a massive double standard for a lot of people because narcissists tend to be quite emotionally labile and they expect
Yeah.
their feelings to be addressed, but they're not good at reciprocating that for other people. And they expect that you should not have emotions and you should talk about really difficult things without getting upset, but they can cry, rage, scream, fly off the handle, and you have to tend to their every little need.
Honestly, it's something that I'm like embarrassed about if I'm being real, because it's like, because I'm guilty of that hands down, where it's like
Yeah.
I get so but like I get so annoyed at people not sympathizing with me, but then I
Mm,
can't reciprocate
mm-hmm.
it, right? I would say that like, but well, here's something that I find interesting though is that the type of empathy that narcissists expect people to kind of exhibit is so different. A lot of the
Yeah.
times it's like I just want to be like heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of run these issues where like I'll have a friend, let's say I have a friend that goes through a breakup and she's like upset, whatever. My
Mm-hmm.
reaction is to get angry, to be like, that guy's a piece of shit, like you can do better,
Mm,
whatever. Like,
okay.
and then they want like compassion. And I
Mm.
get like, and she's like, I still love them. Like I don't like want to hate them. And like I get confused and I'm like, oh, right, okay. Um, let me change the script real quick. Um, and so it's like we expect these, we're projecting our own emotional expectations onto people,
Mm-hmm.
and also getting, because we're again we assume everyone's like us, so we're assuming that
Mm-hmm.
the correct thing to do are things like that.
Yeah.
And then we get mad at everybody else because we're like, oh, you're not giving me the support that I would expect that I would give somebody else, even though
Mm.
even if that's wouldn't be beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah. So what about discards?
Okay. I mean, generally speaking, I would say that, so it's like a, so when you okay, okay, be a little bit more specific if you don't mind.
What was that? Be more specific. So
Yeah,
we
like
talked
what about
about
that?
devaluation. We talked
Yeah.
about um sort of the fantasy of the perfect partner being broken and the devaluation starts. And then there's a discard or a
Okay.
reverse discard.
So for me, it's like because usually I'll be real, like I guess I usually what I would do, at least in the past, and hell now to a certain degree, it's still would
Mm,
be I do more of a reverse discard sort of thing where I actively because I don't know why I just have
mm,
a really hard time breaking up with people like face to face, and so I
mm,
try to push them away to get them to break up with me.
mhm,
I'm sure part of it is like saving my ego from that
mm,
kind of from like looking like the bag. Well, no, not even that actually, because because like honestly, like usually when I break up with somebody, I'm kind of like, oh, I just don't want to think about it because like I feel
mhm,
ashamed about it.
mhm,
Um, but I'll push them away so that I don't have to do the act myself.
mm,
But generally, it's just because I get to like a breaking point in that devaluation where I'm like, no, my like this isn't my soulmate. I need out of this relationship. The anxiety is
Mm.
built up. I'm stressed. Um, yeah, it's like I don't know. To me, I guess it's kind of hard to describe. Just because I'm like a discard to me just kind of looks like a breakup in my mind.
Yeah. Okay. What about hoovering? Have you like broken up with someone and then started to re-idealize them and gone back and hoovered them back into a
Yeah.
relationship? Yeah. Tell me about that
Yes.
process from your point of view.
Usually, like for me at least, what happens is that so I broke up with somebody, and the devaluation is, and at first I'm relieved. I'm like, okay,
Mm,
fucking, I'm out of that. I can finally find my soulmate. And
mm,
then it's weird. I'll just be like sitting and thinking or like drinking or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, that was a really good person for me. That was a perfect person. And
mm,
when I reach out to them, it's usually, I will never like reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I think we should have a relationship again. Usually I'm kind of like trying to kind of test the waters and see
mm-hmm,
like what they think about me or what they're thinking about me. And I'll
mm-hmm,
find some stupid excuse to be able to do that. And based on that is kind of how that goes from that. Usually I I usually don't get back together with them, but also it's just that it's hard for me to let people out of my lives. Like
mm,
I if somebody leaves me, it's like I don't know, it's like losing a limb almost. Like
mm-hmm,
the people in my life are like, though I have basically devalued them to the point of just being a projection of my own insecurities,
mm-hmm,
there's still this need for them to be around, and I can really fixate on that. And like I'll have like fantasies about getting either like reconciling with them or like pseudo revenge fantasies
mm-hmm,
where like I'll go off on them about like whatever. Because I'm also at the time still trying to rationalize in my mind, trying to say, oh, they were terrible. They were terrible the entire time. I was
mm,
perfect. They hurt me in this way.
mm-hmm.
Whatever. Um, it's weird. It's one of the things that's hard for me to explain articulately, if I'm being honest.
I understand. Yeah, because I know that narcissists do like to keep tabs on their exes and reach out sometimes and keep them in their lives in some sense.
If you were part of my life, it's
Mm,
unlikely that you'll ever not be part of my life and how I view myself, I suppose.
interesting. Tell me about that. Like you'll keep reaching out, or like people just become, what is
Not
it?
even that. Like you're part of like the narrative of that. Like, God, this is hard to
I think
describe.
I'm part of a really
Um,
ugly narrative in my narcissistic ex's mind.
and that show that and that's a well, that's the thing is that like I can't comprehend the idea of somebody being estranged from me and not
Mm-hmm.
hating me. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah. Actually, I was just talking to someone about this recently, and we're saying that it's sad that with the black and white thinking, and the
yeah,
all good or all bad, and the lack of object constancy. So it's this concept of not being able to love someone while you're angry with them or love them while you're
yeah,
hating them. And that, narcissists think that everyone thinks that way. And we were talking about how it was sad that even though we're really hurt and terrible things happen in the relationship, that we still have love for that person and they'll never understand it because they think that we hate them.
yep. You're like hands down. I
Yeah.
I recently had about a little while ago. It's I guess it wasn't recently now. It's been like keeping track of time is hard. But like I
Mm,
had a friend who like we were talking about a somebody that I used to have a relationship with,
mm,
and they were describing me as like they don't hate you, like they just don't trust you and they don't feel like you're healthy happy in your life. And it would
mm.
like it kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, the only reason you wouldn't be talking to me is if you hate me though, right? And then they were like,
Interesting.
no. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the idea that people can care about me from afar is very
Mm,
foreign.
yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, what are some of the worst things that you feel like you've done in a relationship?
Oh man. I mean, I've cheated before.
Okay.
Um, I've I'll be honest, like the worst things that I've done haven't been in romantic relationships.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
it's been me getting physically aggressive with people that I was either family members with or
Hmm.
had platonic relationships with.
Okay.
Um, those were messy. Um, the like usual and like because like and like usually it's hard for me to kind of like really wrap my mind around how I've hurt my partners because my actions felt so justified during the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of like they're like I have this one ex who like said how I made her feel replaceable, worthless,
Hmm.
like
Mm.
etc. I never intended to make her feel like that. It was just I was
Mm.
so just
I
kind of
never
flippant
intended.
out. Yeah, like, yeah. I mean, and that's not an
I have a
excuse,
whole video
obviously.
on this.
But like that wasn't an excuse for anything. I just really did
Mm.
not realize like how I was making her feel unloved.
Mm.
And in retrospect, I was like kind of fascinated by it. And it's hard for me to really pinpoint what I did specifically to make her feel like that, just because
Mm.
it was just so natural to me. That's just like how we
Yeah.
are. Um,
See, mine just took that as a straight up attack. Any kind of like, you did this to hurt me, you did this to hurt me. He's like, you're
oh yes.
attacking me and you're causing me everlasting damage just by telling me like these things that I did. And it's like, well, imagine having them done to you.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. Trust me, that's yeah, I would have done the same thing. Like the only
Yeah.
reason that I could hear that is because like I was diagnosed when she told me these things. Like after like I like
Okay.
basically I was trying to make like some amends and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I basically messaged her being like, hey, I was kind of a piece of shit, whatever.
Mm.
And she echoed those sentiments. So I was able to like kind of let I didn't immediately go on the attack. But not 99% of the time, if you point out something I did wrong, I'm thinking, oh, you're trying to make me feel like a piece of shit. You're trying to shame me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Whereas it's actually a bid for connection and a bid for intimacy.
That's an interesting way to phrase it. I gotta keep that in mind
Yeah.
actually,
Because
because
you want the other person to understand you so that you can improve the connection.
that's so interesting. Like I literally don't that doesn't even occur to me like half the time. Like
Yeah.
I kind of get it. I it's
Yeah.
weird. But yeah, like I don't know. Like people point out things I do wrong, and I'm like, oh, you just want to make me feel bad and shit like that. It's like,
Mm.
oh, I kind of expect people kind of like just if I'm not actively hurting you, I kind of
Mm.
assume that they just won't do anything. Like they like this sounds so I'm sorry. This sounds so stupid. I'm like, okay, if I'm
Okay,
not
go ahead.
actually hurting somebody, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, then the situation's over, we're fine. And then them bringing
Mm.
up later me feels like an attack.
Yeah. And this is another massive double standard that I find is that narcissists generally they want you to forgive and forget very quickly anything that they've done. Apologize, it's over, never bring it up again. But yet there's always a running tally of all of the things that they feel the other person has done. They keep
Yeah,
they keep tight.
like
They continue to bring things up.
it's like so for me, it's like it was always kind of like, oh, you're attacking me with this thing that I did that because to me, like
Hmm.
you could have done something a fucking year ago. And
Mm.
like, I'll fucking forget about it. I won't forget about it, but
Yeah.
I'll ignore it. And
Yeah.
then when you bring up something that I did, an hour ago, to
Mm.
me, those things feel the same amount of relevance. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, you're attacking me for something I did an hour ago. Well, you did this thing, which in our mind justifies it a lot of times. It's stupid. But
Mm.
see, sometimes I'll like be talking, like I'm in this state right now where like I'll be talking
Hmm.
about all this stuff, and I realize how ridiculous it sounds when I say my
Mm.
thought process out loud. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's stupid. But yeah.
Like you
But
hear
yeah, it's
these
like
these justifications of like, oh, like your narcissist maybe cheated on you, and then the narcissist justifies it because you smirked at them one time 3 years ago.
yeah. I mean, it's I listen. I got a good justification for that. Let me tell you. It's like, it's yeah.
You've
That's
got a
it.
justification for that.
Like it's rough. It's like yeah. Like I yeah. It's weird because it's like one of the things that like I found myself doing a lot is like oh, well, like you deserve what I did because you did this, even if it's
Mm.
completely disproportional.
Yeah,
Um, and like I don't like
but
it's
it
like
feels proportional, doesn't it,
yeah, it
to
does.
you?
Like 99%
Yeah.
of the time. Yeah. Like and I mean there's been times in my life where like I've definitely known that it wasn't proportional, but I was
Mm,
like
okay.
feeling ashamed and attacked, so I was defending myself any way that I could.
Mm,
But yeah, generally speaking, it feels like proportional. It's like, oh well, especially when I'm rationalizing, like I go through a breakup or something, and like they're pointing out bad things that I did, and then
mm,
at first I feel ashamed, and then I think, well, but they did this, so like whatever, like the score is even.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I understand. So, how do you handle sort of feedback now?
Depends how it's phrased. Typically,
Depends on space. Okay.
I'm still very
Just
prone to like feeling attacked, but I
yeah.
try to give benefit of the doubt nowadays. And
Mm,
honestly, the best that how I've kind of coped with it the best is that like, oh, let's say somebody criticizes me and
mhm,
I take it as an attack, right?
mm.
I'm going to reply in a way that's nice because I'm like, oh, I'm going to look like a better person
Okay.
then,
Yeah.
even if I think it's an attack.
So where's
So
that
it's,
ulterior motive? Is that like the
huh?
is that like that ulterior motive that's always there? Like this is gonna make
But
me look like a better person. Yeah.
more or less. And like
Yeah.
it that's kind of how I've rationalized a lot of my actions. Is I kind of have to like
Mm,
reframe them into like almost manipulate. Like I take honest. Like I was just talking to somebody about this the other day of
mm,
like, oh, like showing your weaknesses and being honest is like
mhm,
intrinsically like it's not a narcissist. It's like intrinsically like putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I was like,
mm.
okay, here's the thing: you have a one up on people if you tell the truth because it's
Yeah.
so it's so crazy saying this out loud. But like you have a one up on people if you tell the truth, because then you don't have to like think of ways around that and everything. So
Mm,
literally, I basically rationalize healthy behaviors and behaving healthily
mhm.
by framing them as a form of manipulation.
Yeah.
I know this sounds so crazy. I'm sorry.
Well, I think I'm telling the truth can be like a manipulation. It's like you can say something unflattering. Like a lot of narcissists will tell on themselves in the early stages of the relationship, like saying that they've cheated in all of their previous relationships. But then people
Yeah.
are like, oh, but he or she is being truthful. They're telling me the truth about it. So for some reason, people think that that means they can trust the person, even though the person's openly telling them that they're untrustworthy.
Yeah, I fucking done that before. Yeah.
No,
I'm like, and
okay.
then there's this added benefit of what, yeah, it sounds bad calling it a benefit, but there's this added component of me being like, then the relationship ends poorly. And it's like, I told you what I was.
Mm,
It is what it is.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what led you to start sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I'm good. What's up?
Okay, like you were gonna say something. What led you to start educating about NPD online?
A combination effect. Like the first one was I was just in a bad space at the time. And like
Mhm.
I had, I was kind of isolated. I had recently, um, I didn't really have an event, and I recently had lost a friend basically to like the conception about my disorder. So I basically had
Mm,
motivation. One, I wanted attention, obviously.
mhm.
And I also wanted to be able to vent, and I was also frustrated by some of the misconceptions around it. Some of
Okay.
the malice that's attributed, I thought was like very unfair, and also left me misunderstood by people
Mhm.
that I was close to at the time.
Mhm.
So I started like a crusade to like, be like, yeah, narcissists aren't quite like you like don't get me wrong, we hurt people like 100%. But like
Mm,
it's not like we're monsters trying to exploit people for the sake of exploiting, at least most of the time. I'm sure there are some.
mm,
But I had a very big motivation to try to alleviate some of the misinformation that I saw everywhere. And again, in fairness, I my motivations over time did change just because like I was surprisingly impacted by some of people's stories And
Mm-hmm.
I bring this up all the time, but there was this woman who like she went no contact with her mother who was a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And because everyone was like telling her to do that, it's like, it is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. And then her mom died, and she like had a lot of grief regarding it and
Mm-hmm.
guilt, and didn't really know how to, and like really dove into narcissism again. And then she came across my stuff, and she left a comment basically being like, "Oh, like it never really made sense to me, this idea that my mom was this master manipulator who was always trying to
Mm-hmm.
like hurt people, but it
Yeah.
makes way more sense for it to be this desperate need for self-esteem regulation." And
Mm-hmm.
like that, and she said that like that gave her peace and everything. And I was like, okay, that made me feel something. I don't know what the fuck it is. It made me feel something. And so having
Your heart just
my
grew two
content,
sizes like the Grinch.
literally, like that's what it felt like. I remember like looking at my computer and just being like, oh God, what the fuck is this? But yeah, like, so it's like it's also nice to it's nice to explore that altruism, because it's like
Mm,
usually when I'm nice, it feels fake because I'm in the back of my head, even when I'm trying my best to be altruistic, it's like,
mm.
oh, I know that I'm like benefiting from this. I have an ulterior motive.
Wow.
But when it's on accident, then it's like, it's like it can't be manipulative. And so it's
Mm,
been a explore that, I guess. That was a
mm.
tangent. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you feel like you get supply out of your channel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hands down. Um, I again, not the only thing that I get from it,
No.
but
Yeah.
and also it's like at the same time, I also get an equal amount of like narcissistic injury, so to speak. Also, I
Mm.
prefer to sell juice for supply, but
Say that again.
I
Oh,
prefer self-esteem juice instead of supply. But
self-esteem juice. Okay.
that's my term that I'm like dedicated to making into like a thing.
Self-esteem juice. I will try to remember
I
that.
appreciate it. But yeah, like I get an equal amount of narcissistic injury from this. Like,
Mm.
people, and they're mean, right? And a lot of
Mm.
people kind of view it in this way of like, oh, if a narcissist is super grandiose, it's like, yeah, come down the size, right? And it's like, if you have a
Mm.
cup of water and the self-esteem juice is in the cup,
Mm.
right? It's like, oh, you give them a narcissistic injury, you're pouring a little bit out. No, I think that's how it works for normal people, question mark.
Mhm.
But if you give a narcissistic injury, like it's putting a hole at the bottom of the cup, right?
Okay. Just
So it's
empty.
like, yeah, like I completely dive into self-hate a lot of time, or it's either self-hate or anger, like one of the two.
Mm.
um and so it's like,
Oh no, I was just gonna ask you, like, how do you feel about educators like myself and honestly most others that do say that narcissists are monsters and evil and all this kind of stuff? How does that make you feel? Does it kind of, is it water off a duck's back at this point, or do those things still hurt you?
at first it really bugged me. Like
Yeah.
people calling it like, is it like the people that were much more vocal about saying, oh, we're demons, whatever.
Hmm.
Like at
I don't
first
go that far, but yeah.
yeah, but at first it bugged me.
Mm.
Nowadays I grew a tolerance for it, purely because I was kind of like, well, like these are people who went through crap and they're coping with
Mm.
it, and they're trying to like help other people. I get where
Mm.
they're coming from now. It's kind of, and
Mm.
like honestly, I don't know if I would have ever have gotten there if it weren't for the fact that my sister has BPD.
Okay.
And like for a long time, I hated anybody with borderline personality disorder because of that. Because I was like, oh my God, they're all fucking monsters and crazy, whatever.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
eventually I was eventually I was kind of like, I kind of like made my peace with it. But I know how that anger is like an important step of healing. And
Mm.
so while I like, if somebody says something just like blatantly untrue, like I've seen people say like, oh, like I don't know, like narcissists don't haven't gone through trauma or something like that. That might piss
Yeah.
me off. But
Yeah.
like,
Because it's so
but
wrong.
if they're yeah, exactly. But if they're just, or like saying it's not a mental illness or saying they're demons, whatever, that stuff will make me mad. But like,
Mm.
you could say some wretched crap about narcissists, and I'll, as long as I don't view it as like just blatant misinformation, I'll just kind of be
Mm.
like, I get it. Like, like I don't agree, but I get it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I think like there's such a high level of self-directed thinking that I've
Yeah,
found on my own platform that I have had narcissists DM me and get very upset about their experience as being a narcissist. And it's so
yeah,
self-directed that they're getting so upset that someone's criticized them that they're not paying attention to all of the horrific things that narcissists have actually done to others because of that lack of empathy.
yeah. I I have mixed feelings about it because it's like on one hand I get like we're very prone to shame, so I get like them
Mm,
feeling like we'll feel personally attacked by like a general statement that may not even apply to us. It feels right a
yeah.
lot of times, but and like and this is something I've actually criticized too, is like these people who they talk about personality disorders, about destigmatizing them, which I support, I agree with, but they
Mm,
want to, but they also feel like pointing out the toxic behaviors that we do is hurting destigmatizing, basically. They're like,
yeah.
oh, like if you point out we can hurt people, then that's stigmatizing. And I'm like, okay, it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and so, and it's like, I feel like there is an in between that a lot of people don't really get to, where it's like, okay, we can acknowledge that narcissists are people and they are hurting, but also
Mm,
acknowledge that they hurt other people and they have work to do themselves that is their responsibility, not other people around them.
mm,
Um, and it's very difficult to kind of navigate that space when everyone in the situation is hurt, right? Like if
yeah.
somebody's making content about narcissists after being in a relationship with one, they went through some trauma. Narcissists, I would say almost universally, have gone through trauma themselves,
Mm,
and it feels like people are trying to take sides in a non-existent battle, or at least a battle that shouldn't exist. Because it's like at the
mm,
end of the day, we're all fucking hurt people. We're trying to heal, trying to understand what is
yeah.
going on with us, went through. I don't know. It's like,
The narcissists that are self-aware and trying to heal.
yeah,
And
yes,
most
yes, yeah.
narcissists aren't trying to heal.
Well, I'm like, because
Mm,
I'm purely speaking to like basically those kind of people, just because I imagine those are people that get all like, oh my god, you're being stigmatizing and shit like that, or the
mm,
ones that are self-aware, but
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who's in or getting out of a narcissistic relationship?
Um, so I always recommend the book "Disarming the Narcissist" by Wendy T. Berry. If
Mhm.
you're like, she wrote it specifically for people who have like family members who are narcissists, or they're
Mhm.
co-parenting with them,
Mm,
or hell, they're just in a relationship that they don't want to leave and they're still trying to work on. Really good
mm,
book, and give some good advice for that. If they're leaving the relationship, I'll be honest, I don't know if I have any actually really good advice for
yeah.
that. I'm like, do it quietly, I guess. Just kind of like, I don't know,
Quietly.
rosy way.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like, I don't know. It's because I'm trying to think of a way that somebody would leave me that would like be the most cordial.
Hmm.
Um, oh, that's a that's a tall order to fill. Let me tell you.
Yeah. What about for a narcissist that's questioning if there is something happening with them, they're starting to wonder about themselves?
Sure. If somebody suspects they're a narcissist, I would, well, one, I would advise for like first and foremost, therapy always helps.
Hmm.
Um,
There are
but
narcissists
there,
that are in therapy though, and the therapist is not aware and they are not having their issue addressed.
yeah, because fucking therapists have time to know what the fuck is going on. I swear to God.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, like, but but here's the thing: is that like, if somebody is
Find a
serious
therapist that
about,
understands personality disorders.
Yeah, that's also important, please. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
like find one
That's
that
the first
specializes.
step. Yeah.
But I would also say that like at that, like somebody who is suspecting they're a narcissist, a lot of this
Mm,
isn't universal. Like for me personally, when I
hmm.
was diagnosed, I was like kind of proud of it. I was like, yeah, I'm a narcissist. I deserve to be. I'm awesome.
Yeah.
But a lot of narcissists, when they find out they're narcissists, fall into like this like shame spiral, being like, I'm a terrible
Okay.
person. I've like hurt all these people, but they self isolate, right?
Hmm.
And so for somebody that's suspecting they're a narcissist, if you're not in treatment right now and you're not getting diagnosed, you're not like addressing these issues, I think the first thing to focus on really is don't focus on the label. It's like maybe you're a narcissist, maybe you aren't. You obviously know that you have issues, right?
Mm,
You know that you have these issues that need to be addressed. Focus on what's hurting you and possibly the people around you, and focus on
mm,
fixing those before you fixate on a label that might just make you feel like a piece of crap, more or less.
yeah.
Um, because it's like mental health, psychology, it's not a perfect science. We have
Mm,
rough categories to try to encapsulate certain populations of people that have
hmm.
um, varying levels of success.
Hmm.
But it's like if you're working on the things that are like impacting your life and the people around you, that's
Mm,
more than 99% of people will do. May not
yeah.
99%, but you know what I mean.
Yes. So, what are your social media handles? Where can people find you?
I am the nameless narcissist. I am everywhere except for Facebook because I hate
Hmm.
Facebook.
I hate Facebook as well.
I can't stand it. I just don't get it. I'll go on there every now and then just to look myself up to see if people are talking about
Okay.
me. But yeah, just Google the
That's
nameless
self-esteem juice.
narcissist. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my self-esteem juice by knowing people are, oh, look how important I am. People on Facebook are talking. But yeah, look me up, the nameless narcissist. I'm on like if you Google me, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I'm not very active there though. Um, you'll find me. I have articles about me if you want to read me in the Scientific American, whatever.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
yeah, the
Yeah.
nameless narcissist. I'm awesome.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Jacob. It was a really good chat.
Agars, thank you. I'm glad that you had me.
Okay.